Okay, chapter 15 of Becoming Sister Wives. And it's in the point of view of Christine. Throughout my entire childhood, I kept my family life as quiet as I could. I had 2 mothers and 10 brothers and sisters. We were from a prominent polygamous family and thought it would be best to draw as little as attention as possible to ourselves. In school, I never felt comfortable trying out for sports, plays, or any activities. I wanted to be as low profile as possible. I was raised in a climate of fear. My father was terrified of our family being split up. When he was 8 years old, his life was turned on end when his parents were arrested for bigamy and thrown in jail. They were released after a single night. This is common, especially in the case of female polygamists who are usually sent home to look after the children. My grandparents initially thought that their arrest was symbolic and that they would have no more trouble with the law. Not long after the release, however, they got word that the authorities were pursuing them once again. My grandfather fled and went into hiding. All of my grandmothers separated from one another and took their children to live in different states on a far-off corner of the same state. This separation meant that my father was permanently cut off. Was permanently cut off from his siblings. For years, he had no idea where the rest of his family was. My dad was drafted into the Vietnam War when he was 19. He was frustrated that he had to serve in a country whose laws denied his family fundamental civil rights and caused them to live in fear. Even though my father had been separated from my grandfather, my grandmother still believed in the importance of serving America. And he urged my grandfather still believed in the importance of serving America. He urged my dad to go and be proud of who he was. Although my grandfather and his family lived a lifetime of fear, he still realized that fear leads to secrecy, and secrecy leads to abuse of power. He advocated for a harsher punishment for underage marriages and abusive relationships. He believed that these crimes would be stopped if polygamists could live openly instead of in secrecy. As my grandfather saw it, secret, closed societies were directly responsible for the abuses for which the FLDS has become sadly infamous. Openness in theory is a lot different from openness in practice, and while I knew that my grandfather's theory and belief was entirely correct, incorporating it into my everyday existence took a lot of time. I'm a very bubbling, outgoing person. As I grew older, I realized that it wasn't always going to be possible for me to hide my family or lifestyle from everyone I met. Sorry guys. I'm so sorry guys, I'm trying here. I'm a very bubbly and outgoing person. As I grew older, I realized that it wasn't going to be possible for me to have my family or lifestyle from everyone I met. It's just not in my nature to mistrust the outside world, as I had been raised to do so. I took on the bright side of absolutely everything. I expect the best from people. Maybe for this reason, I often let it slip, both accidentally and on purpose, that I was a polygamist. Cody often says that because of my sweet in nature, people have no choice but to accept me for who I am. This is honestly the best compliment he could pay me. Perhaps because of my blind trust in the good in humankind, or maybe because of my chatterbox. People began to learn about my family. The reactions were far positive than I'd been raised to expect. Soon after I married Cody and moved to Powell, Wyoming, I got a wonderful job assisting a curator at a local museum. My boss was a fantastic woman. Since we worked in a tiny office, it was just the two of us. We knew we'd be spending an inordinate amount of time together. The first day at work, my boss asked me about my family, my home life. I told her about my husband, Cody, and his two sisters, Mary and Janelle, who lived with us. I explained that Mary and I both had daughters, and Janelle had a son. I said that my sister and sisters-in-law lived with us for financial reasons. I acknowledged that our living situation was a little unusual, but we made it work. When the day was over, I got in my car to drive home. I turned on the ignition, but couldn't bring myself to leave the parking lot. I hated myself for having lied to my boss on my first day of work. I turned off the car, and marched back into the museum. My boss was surprised to see me back so soon. I lied to you, I said. I'm sorry. Cody is my husband. Mary and Janelle are my sister wives. Together we have 3 children. I will always refer to these children as my children, since we are one family. My boss smiled. I had a feeling this was the case, she said. She never judged me, and she never said a single bad word about my family or lifestyle. Eventually, I opened up to another woman at the museum. She was actually a little envious of the family support I had with my sister wives. She imagined it would be useful for her when she raised her children. She had also been wondering how I could accomplish so much at home and at work while raising children. After I've been married with Cody for several years, I was asked to represent our faith in a nonprofit organization, Principal Voices. Except for the FLDS, each sect of Mormon fundamentalism has 2 members on the board of Principal Voices. The mission of the organization is to educate others about polygamous families and culture. The group's goal is to empower both polygamous individuals and families, as well as to provide crisis referrals and response to those in the lifestyle. Principal Voices is the public face of polygamy and exists to deal with issues not just inside our culture but outside of it as well. This group handled inquiries for media requests and interviews and assistance with research. It also interacts with the government on a regular basis, mostly through the governmental organization Safety Net.